Hi, Charlie here. Did you know that every day you're being manipulated and tricked by your city? You may not realize many of these tricks because they're so sneaky, but they're happening every single day. For example, in Canada, did you know they paint fake children on the road? It looks flat when you go close up, but from afar this 3D optical illusion looks like a child playing in the road. This may give drivers a big fright, but the idea is to get them to slow down. That way they approach the optical illusion at a slow pace, and they soon see it go flat as they get closer. This is not only done with children, it's also done with fake potholes. These potholes can be laid onto roads. This makes drivers slow down because they don't want to ruin their suspension or get a crack in their windscreen. But when they get close up, they will realize that these potholes are fake. It's said this same trick is also being used in South Africa and India. But now let's look at some more sneaky ways cities are controlling your behavior. Empty cop cars. In towns and cities, you walk and drive past police cars all the time. But have you ever looked inside and seen no one in them? You may have assumed that the authorities simply parked up and walked out, but that's not the case. Empty cop cars are left all around cities on purpose, and this is for many reasons. First off, it gives people a sense of security, making them think there's cops around to help them out. But it also deters any criminals who may be in the area. They will assume cops may be around, even if they're not. It also makes people slow down when driving. 90% of drivers say they slow down the moment they see a cop car. This is the case if they're going over the speed limit or under it. These cop cars are often parked up on busy city roads, and they'll also sometimes be parked in parking lots. That's because around 60% of carjackings take place in parking lots. But if you sat and watched these cop cars for a day, you'll see no one ever comes and moves them. It's just to make you think that Big Brother is always watching. Rocks under bridges. You may have noticed this before, but never thought about why they're there. But if you go under most bridges, there are rocks. Sometimes these are more natural boulders, and sometimes cities don't even bother to try and hide it. Take this bridge in Guangzhou, China. The spikes are there to make sure no homeless residents sleep under the bridge. Now, that's in China, but some countries do pretend to be nice. Many think the uneven boulders under this bridge in Calgary, Canada are for decoration. But no, the sinister undertone is to make sure homeless people do not sleep there. This is known as defensive architecture, but many see it as offensive. But what do you think? Is it good that they do this, or is it mean to homeless people? Cities justify this by saying that if they don't do it, the underside of bridges turns into a homeless camp. But on the other hand, they've got to sleep somewhere. Camera signs. If you walk in many places in the city, you'll see signs like this. They'll say warning, 24-hour video surveillance in use. These scary red and yellow signs really stand out. But did you know that a lot of the time they're totally bogus? You may have thought, why put up signs when you could just put the camera up? Well, it's because cameras are expensive, but signs aren't. These signs are basically scarecrows for criminals. There may not be any security cameras, but putting a sign up will make people think that they're being watched. In some parts of the UK, they even put up these creepy signs that say, "Smile, you're on CCTV." But as Big Brother and creepy as these signs are, a lot of the time there is no CCTV in the area. But these are effective. According to one study, crime decreased 12% in the experimental areas with these signs. Bench armrests. Ever wondered why there seems to be so many armrests on benches? Sometimes there are so many that heavyset people don't even fit on the bench. Well, all of those armrests have nothing to do with comfort. Instead, they're put there to make sure homeless people don't sleep on the benches. Some critics say that young homeless people are often the most targeted by these. Some benches are also formed in unusual shapes. For example, the Camden bench, which launched in Camden, UK and is now used around the world. It may look like a pharaoh's tomb, but all of these slants are to make sure that homeless people don't sleep on the bench. On one hand, I can see how people sleeping on the benches all the time would be an issue. But are these designs really the best way to solve the issue? Maybe they could put some of the money to make these into actually helping the homeless. Floor spikes. You've probably seen these triangular spikes in cities before, but you may have thought nothing of it. Or maybe you assumed it's some kind of trendy arty thing. But no, these are to keep people moving and make sure no one takes a nap outside certain buildings. It seems cities really do not like people taking naps outside. Interestingly, you'll never see these spikes in Japan because it's commonplace to take a nap on the sidewalk. But in other major cities around the world, these spikes are to deter rough sleepers. Many businesses have been criticized for putting these outside their buildings. Designers also use spikes for other things. You may have never noticed these metal spikes and this small ramp before, but it's actually known as an anti-pee-pee. This basically stops anyone from taking a pee on the side of the road. That is, unless they wanted to splash right back at them. A few years back, outside an apartment building, one homeless man saw some spikes where he would usually sleep. He began protesting and got all of the building's tenants to protest with him, and eventually the spikes were removed. But there's still thousands of these in every city around the world. Fake CCTV. We've already covered how some security camera signs are fake, but how many of the actual cameras you see are fake? In 2002, the NYPD placed 200 fake cameras all around the city. This made people question which ones were real and which ones were fake. That's right, many of the security cameras you see are total decoys. However, they do the trick. Much like the empty cop cars, these simply make people think they're being watched. A lot of these look very convincing and people have now begun buying them for their homes. But what do you think? Is this a good idea or is it too big brother for you? Skate stoppers. If there's one thing cities dislike even more than homeless people, it's skaters. Unless you skateboard, you may never have noticed this. But skateboarders are directly targeted by cities. Metal studs are placed on poles and benches, called skate stoppers. If a skater went over one of these skate stoppers, they would fly off their board and be injured too. The first city to do this was the skater capital of the world, San Francisco. But since then, the world has caught on and started doing the same thing. Road signs. If you're not skeptical of cities by now, I don't know what's wrong with you. It's pretty clear that you shouldn't believe every sign you see on the road. For example, warning of red light cameras are sometimes just that, warnings. There's no backing to their claims because there are no red light cameras. But I guess this is a pretty useful white lie if they prevent accidents. At the same time, there's also sometimes speed camera signs. But sometimes there's no real speed camera to back this up and the sign is simply a warning. Standing benches. You may think benches are for sitting, but if you think that, then you haven't been to enough cities. A design called the half bench has been getting popular in many towns and cities. This is basically a leaning bench that you can't even sit on. Again, this is to prevent homeless people sleeping on the benches. But I think this is going a little bit overboard. You'll start seeing more and more of these half benches outside things like bus stops. And some McDonald's outlets have even begun putting these in their restaurants. This is so that people don't loiter around when they're waiting for their food. Fake cop cars. Picture this, you're speeding down the road having a great drive. But then out of the corner of your eye you see a cop car far away. You instantly slow down and mind your P's and Q's. But as you drive past it, you realize this is a fake 2D cop car. It sounds like a joke, but this is reality. These were apparently put up by the Taylorville Police Department in the USA. Some say it's a good idea because it gets people to slow down, and it also saves money because you don't need to pay the cops to sit there all day. But of course, this only works once, as you'd have to be pretty dumb to fall for this over and over again. Trash can openings. You may think that it's a design flaw that trash cans have such small openings, but this is done totally on purpose to make sure you only throw away small items. This means you can't dump a bunch of trash from home in a public trash can. Some criticize this, saying that this leads to fly tipping, but what do you think about this subtly manipulating design? Mall escalators. Okay, this one takes place in the malls of towns and cities. Have you ever noticed that malls' up and down escalators are found at totally different parts of the floor? This is not thanks to bad design. The layout is intentional to make shoppers walk past as many stores as possible. This will boost the city's GDP and make them a lot of money. Smoking signs. This one is high tech, but it's soon coming to a city near you. One Swedish company has made an interactive sign which stops people smoking. If you smoke near it, it will sense that smoke, and then the sign will begin coughing and wheezing. This is kind of a creepy pressure sign, but some say it's a good thing because it will stop people from smoking near other people. The sign was created by a company named Apotheket. This is one of the largest pharmacies in Sweden, and their goal was to sell kits to help people stop smoking. The question is, do you think these signs are a good thing? Some say it would have no impact on them, and when they filmed people's reactions, many seemed to simply laugh. Disguises. So we already know that cities try and trick you and control your behavior, but sometimes they're not so obvious about it. A lot of the time, defensive architecture is disguised as something good. For example, this anti-homeless bench was disguised as a wheelchair-friendly area. Of course, this makes no sense because a wheelchair could just go on the side of the bench. Also, sometimes these tricks are disguised as clever adverts. For example, this bench is branded as a Nike Run bench. The joke is that you can't sit down, but really this is anti-homeless. Sometimes nice things you see in cities are really covering something up. For example, have you ever seen one of those fountains that comes out of the ground? Sometimes they're put there to stop protests happening. This recently happened in Granary Square, London. So that's how cities control you every day. But cities aren't the only thing controlling and manipulating you. Many don't realize, but when they go to Disneyland, there are many ways they're being manipulated. This is normally to make you buy more things, but they also use many clever tricks to hide things in plain sight. Smell pods. You may have never noticed this before, but next time you're walking around Disneyland, take a whiff of the air. You'll normally smell a really lovely smell, but how is this possible? With a bunch of sweaty people walking around in the sun, surely it wouldn't smell that great. Well, it's all thanks to smell pods all around the park. These pods pump out smells into the park. They're usually in very busy areas or near particular stores. The pumps, which are normally hidden in lampposts, pump out smells such as vanilla or popcorn, and this in turn makes guests want to buy the food related to the smell. A smell pod is used outside the Gibson Girl ice cream parlor, and unsurprisingly, it's one of the most popular stores on Main Street. A vanilla smell is pumped through a vent underneath a window. This brings guests in off the street and into the store. These smells also set off neurons in your brain. Some smells are designed to make you feel nostalgic, and other smells are designed to make you want to eat or drink certain foods. These smell pods also sometimes pump out the smell of strawberries. That is because researchers found that the smell of strawberries is related to happiness. Magic bands. If your cell phone provider was tracking exactly where you go all the time, then they'd be in huge legal trouble. But if you think it's just phone apps like Find My iPhone that are tracking where you go, then you'd be wrong. Many people in Disneyland buy what's known as a magic band. Inside these magic bands are RFID chips. This allows Disney to track your location. These can be used when kids get separated from their parents, but mainly they're used to track where people go in the park. This allows Disney to have a bunch of data about where you go and when. They can then make necessary adjustments to make you spend more money. For example, if a lot of people are going to one place at one certain time, maybe put some extra food stands there to make more money. Not only that, magic bands are often used by adults. This is so that you don't need to carry your park ticket, your room key, or even your credit card. But you have to be careful when you link your payment method to a magic band. That's because these magic bands pretty much separate you from your money. If you can make a purchase simply by scanning your band, then it's easy to stop thinking about how much money you're spending. This makes people spend way more money at the park without even thinking. Go away green. One genius way Disney parks manipulate you is using colors. And one of the colors Disneyland likes to use was actually invented by them. The color is called Go Away Green, and it's an extremely bland shade of green. Scientifically, it's the most unappealing color in the world. That's also the reason why in certain countries, cigarettes legally have to be packaged like this. You'll see this color a lot around the park, but you won't even notice it. The color is designed to make sure that most people simply glance past it, hence the name Go Away Green. It's used to hide areas of the park where they don't want the public to go. This includes gates and doors that are staff only. But most famously, the door for Club 33 is painted Go Away Green. Club 33 is a secret club inside Disneyland. It's located right in the middle of the bright and colourful Main Street. But because it's so small and bland, many people simply pass by not knowing what it is. But because it's so small and bland, most people simply walk past it, not even realising it exists. Behind the door is Club 33. It's basically a very exclusive club with a 10-year waiting list. Members need to pay $50,000 a year to get in. Inside is a wine bar, a 5-star restaurant, and a lounge. Temperature. One tactic Disneyland uses to make you spend more money is heat. If you want to cool off inside Disneyland, then go into the Emporium. The Emporium is the largest store on the Disneyland property, but it's also the park's most cold and heavily air-conditioned building. You may think the reason why this is so that people can cool off in the store, but that's not the case. Instead, it's to trick people into buying specific merchandise in the store. No one would buy a Disneyland sweater on a hot summer's day. But if Disney crank up the AC, then many forget how hot it is outside. They feel the cold, and that's why they feel the need to buy a sweatshirt. So the air conditioning is simply a smart trick Disney uses to get you to buy specific items. Wait times. The first thing everyone looks at when they go to queue up for a ride is the wait time. But did you know that Disney's ride wait times are almost always wrong? And this is true in multiple ways. Disney does not want the times to reflect an actual wait. That's why employees will often display a time that will either drive people toward or away from a specific attraction or section of the park. For example, if one ride is getting busy, then they'll increase the wait time a lot. This makes people go to the other rides and decrease congestion. And if one ride is not being used very much, then they'll make the wait time something like 1 minute or even less. Even if you may have to wait for a bit longer, this drives a lot more people onto that empty ride. Sometimes Disney also lowers your expectations. They may say that you'll need to wait 30 minutes to board a ride, but it will only be 20. That will make you think, wow, that was really fast, and you'll be happier in the park. And also the wait time on the Haunted Mansion ride is almost always 13 minutes. This is actually an in-joke. That's because the number 13 is said to be gothic or bad luck. Dark walkways. This is another way that Disneyland manipulates you using colors. You may have noticed that everywhere in Disneyland is very bright and colorful except the pavements and walkways. Well, they're painted very dark on purpose. The dark color attracts heat from the sun, and this makes standing in place for a long time very uncomfortable. This makes people keep moving around the park and stops any traffic jams. If people loitered around on the hot roads, then they would get very hot and uncomfortable. So the dark and hot pavements and walkways make sure that the guest flow is always smooth and consistent. And the heat will also drive more people into stores which are air conditioned. Hiding construction. Disneyland want to make sure that your time at the park is magical. But if there was a gigantic construction job going on, then this may take away from that magic. That's why Disney have some very clever tricks that they use to hide construction work. Walt Disney himself said that Disneyland is never done, but Disney will disguise their construction using things like sky-colored canapes. This means that in your vacation photos of the park, nothing's sticking out and looking bad. It simply blends in so that you don't even realize. Also, Disney sometimes use scrims printed what the construction will look like when it's done. But sometimes Disney actually highlight construction work. They normally do this for gigantic constructions that people will be interested in. They did this when they were making the ride Mine Train in New Fantasyland. The fences had small windows so that you could take a peek inside. This makes people remember the ride and want to come back at a later date to ride it. And they also do this using concept art outside of rides which are being constructed. This may be enough to make someone book another vacation to make sure they can ride that ride at a later date. Packages. If you've ever booked a trip to Disneyland, then I'm sure you've been offered a vacation package. These packages bundle things like your hotel room, park tickets, and dining all in one. And these packages usually mean that you can make some big savings. But you're probably thinking, how is Disney tricking us if they're offering us a bundle deal to save us money? Well, the trick is not in the package, but instead how Disney markets the package to you. They will normally mention that these are for 6-night, 7-day trips. But if you read the small print, you'll realize that you can get this with a 2 or 3-night trip. But Disney will never say this publicly, so you can actually get this great deal by only staying 2 or 3 nights. But they trick you into making you think that you need to stay for a full week. This is so that you spend way more time in the park buying things like Disney merch and Disney food. Also, sometimes these packages are a total scam. It's actually cheaper to buy the components of your trip separately. For example, separately buying dining, hotel rooms, and tickets instead of all as one package. The thing to remember is always read the fine print. Gift shop exit. This one is pretty much a cliche, but no matter where you go in a Disney park, you will always exit through the gift shop. It can be hard to resist buying some merch of the ride you just went on. But if you're looking to save money, then it's best to budget your trip ahead of time. Also, if your kids are trying to make you buy souvenirs, then set some boundaries. For example, tell them that they can only buy 1 souvenir each day. Some Disney aficionados even use gift cards to stay on budget. If you buy a $10 gift card at the beginning of your trip, then you can only spend that $10. This is a good way to make sure that all of these gift shops don't break the bank. Bounce back offers. One thing Disney loves to do is try to make you book another trip before your vacation's even ended. These are known as bounce back offers. They will often send you an email or give you a pamphlet saying that you'll get a gigantic discount on your next vacation. They'll send you this while you're still staying at the park. That's because the park is fresh in your mind and you won't want to leave. The trick here is that even if you weren't planning another trip, you often will just to get the big discount. But they make up all of that discount because you'll likely spend a lot of money at the park next time you go. You'll be thinking, well, I saved lots of money on the discount, so why don't I splash out in the gift stores? This is how many people think, and it actually tricks you into spending even more money. The good thing is, you're never locked into these offers. This means if you do book a bounce back offer trip, you can always cancel it. Extension discounts. This is one thing which is available to any guest all the time while they're staying at Disney parks. If you've looked at Disney's ticket pricing, you'll know that the longer you stay, the less you pay per day. Sometimes there's actually a 50% discount the longer you stay. Now, you may be wondering, why would Disney charge you less for a longer trip? Well, it's because they'll make up all of that money in the extra time you're spending in Disney shops and restaurants. All those little purchases that you make really mount up for Disney and make them a ton of money. So that's how Disney is manipulating your mind. It's clear Disney mainly want to sell you lots of things, but no one wants to sell you more things than companies. That's why they use many clever tricks to manipulate you every single day. French fries. This one is kind of a basic trick, but it's something you should look out for next time you get some fast food. In 2017, someone on Reddit asked, what did your job want you to hide from the customers? On the thread, someone said they used to work at McDonald's. They explained that McDonald's taught him how to pinch the fry carton just right when putting the fries in. This was to make sure it looked full, but it actually wasn't. Basically, they squashed the carton so it looks like you're getting way more fries. But there's a whole lot of space where they've pinched down where the fries won't go. This may seem like a pretty small saving for them, but seeing as McDonald's fries are sold every second of every day all the time, this adds up to a lot of money. McDonald's got so much heat for this that a spokesperson had to step in. They said that they always try to appropriately fill the boxes and bags of fries. And they said that's so customers can enjoy their world-famous fries to the fullest. But I think they'd enjoy them a lot more if the carton was actually full. That explains why your fries don't stick out of the carton like in commercials. So watch out for this next time you order some McDonald's fries. Excessive use. This is something to watch out for in advertisements. And it's a mind trick that consumers use to make you buy their product over and over again. In shampoo commercials, you'll notice the actors and models always use the product way more than they need to. For example, instead of taking a small amount of shampoo or toothpaste, they will squeeze a ton out. That is to encourage you to burn through their product much more quickly. They want you to emulate the exact same thing that the models do on the adverts. But this makes you run out of their product very fast. Food commercials will also do this, showing the actors making gigantic meals. And in drinks commercials, they will always pour out the entire bottle, not just take a sip. There are other ways companies subtly send you a message about how to use their products. For example, pay attention to wireless commercials. Over the last few years, you'll notice that they're using younger and younger children in their ads. Of course, they're not targeting young kids, but it sends a message to parents that it's normal for kids to have smartphones. Of course, years ago this was not the case, but commercials aren't simply just to make you buy a product straight away. They are trying to condition you to think about their product and their brand in a totally different way, even if it takes many months or years for them to make a return on that investment. Delivery tracking. Nowadays, when you buy something, you want it straight away. We've all been there, where we order something and then sit for hours staring at the delivery screen. For things like Amazon purchases, this is actually accurate information. That's because your product is scanned with barcodes at every single point. Where companies trick you, however, is with food delivery tracking. Many people order a Domino's pizza and then sit for ages waiting for a tracking website to update. But all of those pizza delivery tracking websites are totally false. There isn't someone sitting there updating your pizza every single time it's taken out of the oven or a piece of pepperoni's put onto it. Instead, it simply relies on average wait times. The Domino's pizza tracking technology was made in 2008, quite some time ago, and that animated bar on their website is simply based on average wait times. This actually backfires if the pizza is taking too long. That's because sometimes the tracking bar is going faster than the people. At least you know that there's not some Domino's worker updating the progress of every pizza they make. Otherwise, I can't imagine how much longer the pizzas would actually take to arrive at your door. Call centers. This is a very clever trick that most companies do not want you to know. Have you ever called up a customer service line and it's gone to somewhere across the world? Most of the time the person is talking with a script and also a language barrier. This can make things very time consuming for you and also annoying. While on the phone to customer service, I'm sure you thought, why can't I just speak to someone in my country? Well, if you're in the USA, there's a way to do this. If you call up and ask to speak to someone in English, most of the time they'll send you to an Indian call center. But if you select the option for Spanish, you'll likely get transferred to a call center in Texas. And from there you can simply just speak English, as those people speak both English and Spanish. The reason why they do this is because there's way more calls that come in for English speakers. That's why it's way cheaper to outsource those jobs to India. But there's only a few people who need to speak to someone in Spanish, so they can afford to do it in Texas. This is the case for many companies' support lines. Because it costs the companies a bit of extra money, it's something they don't want most people to know. But it's a pretty clever way to get around someone reading a script and who doesn't speak the language perfectly. Decoy products. In the biz, this is known as the asymmetric dominance effect. It basically involves bringing in a decoy product in order to make people buy more. Let's imagine you're thinking about buying two different bottles of wine on a shelf. They're both pretty similar, but one is $10 and the other is $30. This makes both bottles seem expensive. But if there was a decoy product, a $50 bottle of wine which is way worse, then you'd think the others are reasonable. The decoy product basically lowers your expectations and makes the other products look way better. This is done most commonly with computers. You may have two expensive computers with similar specs and similar prices. Most people would think it's way too expensive and not worth it. But when you bring in a decoy with worse specs and a higher price, this makes the other two products seem way better. You're then much more likely to choose between one of them. So if you've ever been shopping and seen a product with way worse specs and way higher prices, then you've been a victim of a decoy product. Anthropomorphism. There's something in human brains which makes us love thinking of animals and objects like humans. Many people give their boats names. They talk to their pets as if they can talk back. And even as kids, we have stuffed animals with names that we talk to. Companies know this odd thing about human brains and exploit it to their heart's content. That's why brands often have a mascot. It's because it attributes human characteristics to an object or brand. This makes us see the brand or product like a human and thus empathize with it. The anthropomorphization of brands makes us trust them a lot more. This cognitive bias creates an emotional connection between you and a product or company. Researchers at Elon University found that if you have an anthropomorphic character, your sales will increase. Researchers at Elon University found that if you have an anthropomorphic character, then your sales will increase. It's kind of surprising to think about, but when you do, you'll realize almost every big brand has some form of anthropomorphism going on. Gruen transfer. Have you ever been walking around a mall or IKEA and got lost because it's like a zigzagging maze? Well, that's not a bad design flaw. In fact, it's very much intentional. It's known as the Gruen transfer and is named after the mall architect Victor Gruen. Victor Gruen found that the best way to get shoppers to spend more was to make it impossible to escape his malls. This is still used today, and it's the reason why malls and superstores are made in a maze-like way. Ironically, a sense of disorientation sways people into a false sense of security. This makes them feel very at home in your store, and it also makes them cover more ground, meaning that they will see more products and buy more too. Look around your local store and you'll see that it goes in a counterclockwise route. That's because 90% of people are right-handed and will use their left hand to steer the cart. Many stores also won't have any clocks and won't use natural lighting. This suspends the sensation of time, and it's a similar technique that casinos use to make people stay there longer. Also, stores will place basic items like milk and bread at the back of the store. This means if you go in to get something basic, you have to walk past a bunch of things you don't need. This will probably make you stop, look at them, and maybe buy them. The disorientating store layout also distracts you. This is done on purpose, and it's thanks to a study from Stanford University in the USA. The study found that when you're distracted, you're much more likely to take risks. This would include things like impulse buying, so that's why stores keep you distracted and disorientated. Price anchoring. Price anchoring is also known as overpricing. Let's say that you pick up a menu in a restaurant. You see a dish for $100, so you go down and pick a cheaper option. Well, if you've done that before, then you're a victim of price anchoring. There's a cognitive bias, which means customers rely heavily on the first piece of information they get. So if the first price of a meal you see is $100, then that is your baseline price. Anything lower than that seems much cheaper, even when it's not. Car dealers also do this all the time by setting the standard price of the car way higher than it should be. This makes them seem like they're cutting you a great deal, when really they're still overcharging you. Simply because it's the first price they see, that means they think that cheaper vehicles are a good deal. You're much more willing to accept a high price simply because it's lower than the first price you saw. Size matters. You may think that today humans are eating more than ever, but there's actually a secret growing trend in companies, which is making food portions smaller. That would be fine, only they're not doing this with a reduced price. To make their products seem more competitive, they'll simply reduce the size, not the price. Also, many fast food places have been caught increasing the amount of ice they're putting in their drinks. That's so they can give you much less drink. One study from the Daily Mail found companies are reducing their product sizes from 6 to 12%. But now that you know these psychological tricks companies are using, maybe you can get ahead of them. I don't know about you, but I feel pretty dumb after knowing how much I've been getting tricked by companies. So that was how companies trick you every day. But what about your own government? It's no secret that governments do many things they don't want us knowing about. From spying on us to trying to manipulate our behaviors. Well, here are some very scary ways governments are controlling us every day. Traffic light buttons. When you're crossing the street, I'm sure you go and press the traffic light button. Then you see the light change and you assume that's because of your behavior. After all, when you press a button, something happens, right? Wrong. Most buttons you see attached to traffic lights are simply placebo buttons. For example, did you know in New York, 91% of all traffic light buttons have been deactivated? That means when you press a button at a crosswalk, nothing really happens. These lights are simply on a timer, but governments like to make you think that you're in control. Heating controls in most offices are also complete placebos. You're able to press the button and it says the temperature is increasing, but in reality, it's all a placebo to make you think that you're in control. The same is true for elevator close buttons. Almost all of those have been deactivated as well, and it's to make you feel like you're in control. The mosquito. The older you are, the less frequencies you can hear. For example, a 15-year-old can hear many more sound frequencies than, say, a 50-year-old. And governments are now using this to their advantage. This is through inventions like the mosquito. The mosquito was invented by a Welsh shopkeeper named Howard Stapleton. One day his daughter was harassed by local teenagers hanging around their local shop. So he invented a device which puts out a high-frequency noise. Amazingly, you can only hear the noise if you're under 25. Anyone who's older than 25 won't have ears which can pick it up. That's because the frequency is simply too high. The device made loitering kids want to move away. That's because it sounds like a mosquito in your ear. It gave them headaches and hurt their ears, making them go away. Governments around the world now use devices like the mosquito. It's supposed to stop groups of young people gathering around and sometimes getting up to mischief. But many have called this device very antisocial and anti-young. Many teens have said they get nausea when they hear this sound. And some say the entire invention goes against human rights of the young. Cell phone towers. You may not realize this, seeing as everyone uses phones which are hooked up to cell phone towers. But ever since cell phone towers have been around, there have been people crying out to get them removed. Many say cell phone towers are actually bad for your health. Some scientists say that they're fine, while others don't. And many have also said that recent 5G towers may be bad for people. This has led to many of them being burnt down in large cities. For example, in the UK, 77 5G towers have been burnt down this month. Personally, I'm not sure if these are bad for you or not, but it does seem like governments will go to extraordinary lengths to hide them from you. Recently in Arizona, governments were caught disguising cell phone towers as cactuses. They've also been disguised as American flagpoles, for example at the College Station in Texas. In the United Kingdom, they disguised one as a fir tree. Palm trees have also been used as cell tower disguises. And even modern art sculptures have been used as disguises. Controversially, in Florida, a church cross was even used as a cell tower disguise. And there have been dozens of instances of trees being used as cell tower disguises as well. Now, maybe governments are just doing this because of the outcry. They don't want people burning these down thanks to wrong information. Or maybe they know they actually are bad for you and that's why they're hiding them. I don't know, but it really is suspicious. So when you're walking around, take a second look at that palm tree or that cactus. Maybe it's a cell tower. Fake CCTV. Go to any major town or city and it's like you're living in 1984. There's pretty much CCTV cameras all over the place. We're all aware that most of China is completely filled with CCTV cameras. And even in more free countries, this is also the case. For example, in London, there are 500,000 CCTV cameras. But how many of the security cameras you see are real? Real cameras cost a lot of money, not only to make and install, but you also have to pay for a room to store the footage in. Also all of the screens and computers and a guy to watch the footage. That's why many governments will simply put up a fake camera. This will make you think you're being watched and stop you from doing anything they don't want you to do. The same is true for some speed cameras on the road. Many of these are fake, but if you break the speed limit, they'll emit a flash. But in reality, it won't even take a photo, they're just there to make sure you don't go over the speed limit. The tricky thing is though, there's no way to know which CCTV cameras and traffic cameras are real and which aren't. Anti-homeless designs. Homelessness is a big problem in most cities. Governments try to tackle this. But when I say tackle it, I don't mean fix the actual problem. Instead, they'll simply use tricks to make sure homeless people don't go to their cities. If you've ever seen these spikes outside stores or in streets, that's to stop rough sleepers. Many think they're to stop birds from perching there, but that's not true. One company in London even put sharp spikes outside their building to stop rough sleepers. But after a gigantic public outcry and a petition, they were removed. Subway music. In the 1990s, the city of Montreal, Canada had a problem. There were lots of gangs hanging out in their subway stations. So that's why they came up with a smart idea. This was to play classical music in the stations. They figured that young people dislike classical music, so if it's being blared out underground, they won't hang out there. It sounds like a silly idea, but it worked. Also, normal commuters won't get stressed out by crowded trains or delays. In the UK, McDonald's often played classical music late at night. This is to calm down anyone who's drank too much. That's because it's a popular tradition in the UK to go to a McDonald's after drinking a lot. Camden bench. The Camden bench was introduced in Camden, UK in 2012. People were confused as large concrete blocks appeared everywhere. It turned out they were actually benches. The design seems kind of ugly and a bit random, but in reality, it's very thought out. Every aspect of the bench is meant to control your behavior. The bench has no crevices, meaning dealers can't hide anything in them. There's also an angular design, meaning people can't skateboard across them. And this also prevents the bench from being slept on by homeless people. It also has a waterproof coating, meaning graffiti won't stay on it. This bench has received lots of criticism, mainly from people saying it's anti-homeless. But that has not stopped governments all over the world from buying into this bench and using the exact same design. Pink prisons. When you think of a prison, you think of a tough, scary place. That's why it may be confusing to see this Swiss prison. It looks more like a 5-year-old girl's bedroom. But really, there's a lot of psychology and thought that goes into this pink prison. The psychological experiment began in 2013. That was when they painted 30 prison cells pink. The color's name is Baker Miller Pink, also known as Cool Down Pink. This color can apparently calm down even the most hot-headed criminals. Since then, some jails in the USA have also turned pink. This is based off research from Alexander Schnaus. He had 100 people hold their arms out in front of them. Their arms would then be pushed down. Amazingly, 90% of those people were weaker when they were looking at pink as compared to any other color. Football teams have even used this as well. The college football team at University of Iowa Hawkeyes has a pink changing room for the opposition team. This is to try and get their opponents in a passive mood before the game starts. Trash cans. Okay, trash cans are in pretty much every town and city, but did you know they're designed in a way to control your behavior? Many trash cans are slanted so that people can't sit on them. They also have very small openings. This is not a design mistake, instead it's to stop people from disposing of large items. This makes more people go to the junkyard rather than dumping it in a trash can. Anti-sticker streetlights. Look at many streetlights in cities and you'll see a range of colourful and interesting stickers on them. You may like this design, but governments don't. That's why some cities have odd plastic wraps over their streetlights. Some think this is to give people better grip when they're waiting for cars to stop while crossing the road. But no, they're to stop people putting stickers and gum on the streetlights. This may be good for stopping graffiti and gum, but not so good if you've lost something and you want to put up an advert. But now it's time to make your voice heard. Comment below which was the scariest way governments are controlling our behavior. If you want some more amazing videos, then check out my second channel. But as always, thanks for watching. There's some more videos on screen right now. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Top 10s.